Yo, I'm a pirate. And as a pirate, we're going to talk about how to close sales calls. Now, even if you're not going to go into selling, there are many excellent skills in this chapter that you can use in your life after Seton Hall that have nothing to do with selling. So pay attention. This is a big deal. All right. We go into PowerPoint mode here. More than anything else, we're going to go through some of our mistakes. We're going to look at our verbal and nonverbal like we've been doing all semester. We're going to talk about the importance of the trial close. We're going to talk about some common closing mistakes. And more than anything else, we're going to pick up some techniques that are more effective if we want to close. Okay? So what is a close? A close. A close means obtaining a commitment from the prospect or customer to make a purchase. Closing connotes the achievement of those sales call goals. Okay. Now, I think definitionally this is accurate. But at the same time, if you want to think about it from Dr. Dano's perspective and what we've been talking about all semester about new school selling, closing means being helpful. The only way you're going to close is if there's something in it for them. So if you're the consultant and the problem solver and you help them with something, closing means being helpful to a prospect or to a customer. That's what I think. All right? Now, it is not a linear process. Now, we have been talking about the sales steps all the way from prospecting now to closing. And it seems like a linear process. But just like we did in the previous chapter, in chapter 8, when we talked about when an objection comes up and how it's not to your advantage to defer an objection, because if you shut someone down, they're going to shut you down and they're going to stop listening. Now, sure, it should be some natural progression to the dialogue with the customer. Now, please understand it can happen at any point during the selling process, not just the end of the presentation when you ask for business. If you should ask for business, we'll get to that. But we will look for buying signals. Sometimes these are verbal, yes, I'm really interested. And sometimes these are nonverbal. And we'll talk about some of those nonverbal signals. We will use the dialogue, the back and forth, to understand when and if we should close. Okay? It's their perspective. We're looking for a win-win. We want to be helpful to them. All right? So when we talk about closing methods or closing techniques, yes, we are actively listening, and we've talked about active listening in previous chapters. At the same time, now, silence, we have to talk about this here, because silence is a little bit old school, as silence applies pressure, sales pressure. At the same time, if you've done your due diligence prior to the sales call and you've had a good conversation with them during the sales presentation and objections came up and you used Chapter 8 overcoming objection skills, and then you've gone through the process and you found out ways to be helpful and you closed and they agreed, well, even before they agree, but you've closed and you say something, based on your needs, I think the best solution for you would be to buy this and help yourself out. At that point, you're kind of done. You cannot buy for them. They have to buy. So there is a little bit of silence. You really need to give them time to respond to your close. Sometimes it's right then and there in the sales call, and sometimes it might be sales presentation. Sometimes it might be after the sales presentation. All right. We're going to talk about 7 specific closing methods. All right. Assumptive, minor points, alternative choice, direct, summary of benefits, balance sheet, and the buy now close. Now, some of these are better than others, so let's talk about them in turn. The assumptive close. You go through your F, A, and B, objections come up, you overcome the objections, there are no other objections, and you say, I can ship it to you on Monday. I'll go ahead and schedule that. Let's get this paperwork filled out so we can get this order into the system. Whoa. You're jumping the gun here. I think the assumptive close is a very, very lousy closing technique. It's very schwarmy. It's very old school, always be closing, always be closing, always be closing. You're putting the onus on the buyer to say no to you. You know, you assume, and you know we can take the word assumption and change the letters around and make an ass out of yourself, that your buyer will ultimately buy. I am not a fan of this technique. It is very old school. I do not recommend it. The minor points close, okay? The minor points close is fine. There's nothing wrong with the minor points close. It's really good when your buyer is indecisive. You've done your F, A, and B. Objections have come up. You've answered all the objections. And your buyer needs help getting through the process. So you might get the buyer to agree to a number of smaller things, color, credit terms, some other, and you gradually work towards, okay, you worked out all the 15 or 20 minor points, you're pretty much done at this point. Instead of one big yes and then figuring out some small details after the big yes. This is not a bad technique. This is fine. You use it specifically when your buyer is indecisive. The alternative choice close. Ooh. This is very old school. It's kind of sneaky. You do your F, your A, and your B. Objections come up. You overcome objections. And then you say, okay, which model works best for you? Model 22 or Model 35? Would you like this delivered tomorrow? Or would you like it delivered on Monday? You know, so what happens is you're asking your prospective buyer and you're giving them a choice, but the sneaky part about that is you're giving them a choice between buying option A and buying option B, and no part of this conversation is not buying. This has that underlying tone of an assumptive close. Someone walks into the car dealership. Okay, you want the red one or the blue one? Red and blue are both buying decisions. It seems like you're making a choice, but you're making a choice to buy. It's kind of sneaky. It's very old school. Not a fan. The direct close. You are very direct. You're very straightforward. You simply ask for the order. Sounds like to me you're ready to take the bill. Let's get that order into the system. Now, the book says this is a closing technique that's good when the prospect is showing very strong buying signals, or the person you're trying to sell to is a very straight shooter and doesn't like small talk. I personally feel that direct close is still very old school, and I don't think you need to be this direct at all. We talked about in Chapter 8 the overcoming objection technique that was the direct denial. I'm not a fan of that one either. The summary of benefits close. This is probably the most common of all the closing techniques. It's probably one of the most effective of all the closing techniques. Think about it. You went through your F, your A, your B, your F, your A, and the B, and the B, and the B, and the B. You had your dialogue back and forth. You found out, of the 10 things that you presented, number 2, number 5, number 7, and number 8 are clearly the most important things that you can offer to this particular customer at this particular company. And as you get to the end of your presentation, you say, you know something, number 2 really seems like a good thing for you. Number 5 really seems like a good thing to you. And that combo of number 7 and number 8 really looks like it can be very helpful for you. Based on these 4 things, I suggest you buy. This is a very new school WIIFM closing technique for someone. It's effective. All you're doing is regurgitating back what they told you they like the most. The balance sheet close is another technique. It's another one that is good when your buyer's indecisive, and it's extremely similar to minor points. We have some, you guys all had your 2 accounting courses in your sophomore year. Think about it, you have assets and debits on each side, and you do pros and cons, and you go through where these are the things that are really good for you, these are the things that are not really good for you. Probably there'll be more pros and cons, and based on the pros, I suggest you buy. It's a way to work things out. It's a very back and forth. It's very good when your buyer's decisive. It's also more new school than some of the other techniques. This is a fine technique when your buyer is indecisive. The buy now close. Oof. We can go back to exam 1 and your extra credit when we were talking about scarcity as one of the 6 weapons of influence. And this is exactly the scarcity close, the buy now close, the standing room only close. It creates a sense of urgency with the buyer to purchase immediately. Now, you must be ethical about this, and there really must be an honest and real scarcity thing. We have a price increase on this product effective in 2 weeks. If you place the order today, it can be guaranteed to ship at the current price. This is a scarcity, standing room only, buy now close. As long as you're being truthful about this 2-week window, and you're not lying to just create some artificial scarcity, okay. My company's running a special this week. This product is currently 20% off the regular price. If it's only this week, okay. If it's not just this week and you're just saying that for the sake of saying that, that's unethical. All right. So let's review. We get into our presentation. FAB, FAB, FAB. We overcome objections. We use an overcoming objection technique. We use a closing technique. And there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get a no. You're going to get a rejection. And I'm going to tell you right now from my sales experience, it's very difficult to separate I'm saying to no to you as a person versus no to your product and your company. It's very difficult for a salesperson to separate those two because it feels like you're getting the no. You carry the no, and it's kind of deflating. I remember when I was slightly older than you guys, and I would leave work on a Friday, and I did not have a good Friday, and I got a lot of no's, and I went home after work, and I didn't go to happy hour. I felt kind of blah. I was like, I think I'm just going to watch a movie or watch a game or just check out. I don't feel like hanging out with anybody. Now, sure, you can do some self-talk. You can talk this out with your sales manager or maybe some of your other sales buddies. You may or may not be the problem here. Over time, you'll learn that, okay, there is this rejection thing or there's a rejection now, but you don't burn a bridge and you keep the relationship going. And maybe it's a no or a rejection now, but 6 months from now, when their current client pisses them off, they come back to you immediately because you were very professional and you stayed in touch and you followed up. We've talked about attitude in multiple other chapters, specifically chapter 8, where we talked about not getting negative or don't be negative. The same thing happens here. If we want to develop a relationship long-term going forward, you need to have the right attitude about this. You're not going to get defensive. You're not going to get upset. You're still going to try to be helpful. You're still going to try to build a relationship even if they don't buy. Successful salespeople display a tenacity, sticking with a task even through difficult and adversity. The more modern term for tenacity, which we've heard in a topic talk already this semester, is grit. Any Flyers fans out there, we have gritty. Just saying. But grit, and there's a very good book with the title Grit. Professor Angela Duckworth at the University of Pennsylvania. She's an industrial social psychologist. Very, very good book for you and your Christmas reading downtime. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about this whole closing thing. Now we had the techniques. How do we know when we should close? Well, we're looking for our buying signals. We're looking for verbal and nonverbal cues, right? Most salespeople that do have a trouble closing or are not good closers also tend to be the ones that ignore both the verbal and the nonverbal feedback coming back to them. So, verbal signals. I like those features you described. Wow, what colors does that come in? When can you ship? How much better is this than what I'm using right now? Who are the other firms that have bought this product more recently? My orders must be split amongst 4 warehouses, but if you can do that, this might work out. These are positive verbal buying signals. They're not they're not yes, I'm buying, but things are trending in the right direction. Nonverbal. Your audience is relaxed. They're friendly. They're not confrontational. They're open. Okay? They're not sitting there with their arms crossed like this, like they're blocking you. Right? They're open, they're friendly, relaxed. They have a relaxed face. They have open eyes. You've got eye contact. Remember, if you don't have eye contact, you got nothing. Right? Bringing out paperwork to wrap up the deal, purchase orders, contracts. I've never seen this happen. Come on, book. Are you kidding me? No one's going into a sales meeting with the purchase order contracts. No. Yes, positive gestures, expressions. Maybe, the prospect is like looking at, having sidebar conversation with someone else at the table in the room. Like, can you believe they could do this for us? And then you could take that as like positive, nonverbal. You're seeing the eye contact or the head bobs going across the table from people. If someone's nodding with you and not saying anything, but you get them just unconsciously nodding at you or with you, they are very positive nonverbal signals. All right. Now, for our product demonstration, we did the trial close, and we only talked about it briefly. This is our first deep dive into the trial close. And the trial close, I'm telling you right now, is an extremely effective technique. Not only should you use it when you are making a sales presentation, you should trial close everyone all the time. To use that poker analogy that I like to all the time, before you place your bets, wouldn't it be really cool if you knew what everybody else had in their hands? If you could magically look at everyone else's cards before you decide whether you're going to fold or you're going to put some money in to stay in? That's what a trial close is. A trial close gives you feedback without asking for business. A trial close is always a question. We're going to do some examples in a second. And there are some trial close that can become the closing technique. But really what happens is you have an objection. You trial close to make sure that you did in fact overcome that objection. And then you close. Or you trial close on a really good point. Like, our quality is the leading standard and twice as better than everyone else in the industry. Hey, don't you think that quality is a really good thing for you? That's a trial close. You're asking someone's opinion in the sales presentation. It's a trial close. Because if they come back and say, quality, sure, that's fine and dandy. I really only care about price because I only got so much money. Your trial close gives you the feedback that it's not quality that they're after, so stop stressing that. Start thinking about price and getting them the most optimal price. All right, some closing mistakes. We already talked about bad attitude. We talked about pre-approach or sales call planning and not doing a strong enough job background-wise in getting into the sales presentation. And really, the third one here is the cardinal sin and probably the most common mistake of all mistakes that salespeople do. They talk instead of listening. They talk instead of listen. It's probably a better way to say it. They have their sales presentation. They spent weeks working on it. They have the whole thing worked out, and they're just enamored with themselves working on this particular sales presentation. And they want to hear themselves do it. And they don't pay attention to the verbal and the nonverbal feedback in the sales call. This is a monster mistake. Monster mistake. The one size fits all, this is a pretty common mistake too. You're not customizing the presentation or your product or your offerings for a particular client. Also pretty common, there are some salespeople that really do not close. They are afraid of asking for the business. They get to a certain part of the presentation and they just go off the rails, and it's tangent after tangent after tangent after tangent, and they're 45 minutes in, and they don't even know whether it's a good time to ask for business or not. And some people do not know about post-closing, especially if a purchase is not made. But if a purchase is made, we go into follow-up. Speaking of follow-up, let's say everything works out. You do your planning, you do your sales call planning, you get to your sales call, your sales presentation, FAB, objection, trial close. You then close, summary of benefits, close. They agree with you that you are being helpful and they buy. This is the beginning of the relationship, not the end. That's what follow-up does. Okay? In Chapter 3, we talked about service quality and the 5 dimensions of service quality. Good salespeople have good service after the purchase. Why? Because we are in a CRM world. We want CLV, long-term relationships. If you're not following up and maintaining that relationship, why'd you go through all that time and effort in creating the relationship in the first place? The whole goal is to get them to buy again from you. Because you did such an amazing job with them the first time around, they want to buy from you again. Well, part of that is the follow-up, the dialogue. You learn something about them during the sales presentation. You're going to learn a lot more when they're an actual client. Right? We need to investigate complaint behavior. We look at gaps in our performance. We examine customer complaints. These are very, very common customer complaints, product performance or quality, some kind of training that we probably didn't provide enough of, installation of our various products or services, credit, billing, delivery. These are common complaints in the follow-up. We have to handle these fairly. Hopefully you are part of a sales team or you're the salesperson and you're involved, but you have someone else on your team that actually handles all this for you. Again, some of these we've heard in Chapter 8. We're listening. We don't argue. We show empathy. That's the listening part. We don't make excuses. We own these things. We're systematic in our process. We express appreciation about their business. We take detailed notes. This is how we maintain relationships. If there is a post-sale problem, that's what we do. We never wait. We're on it. We're proactive. We're checking with our customer right away. Right? Other key follow-up activities. Well, of course, we want satisfaction. We like satisfied customers. More important than satisfaction, though, is retention and loyalty. Retention and loyalty are better metrics, and this is a whole nother conversation we can get to in the future. Retention and loyalty are better metrics for ROI of CLV and CRM. Satisfaction doesn't correlate well, believe it or not. There's a ton of studies out there that shows that satisfaction doesn't correlate well. We're always looking for that WIIFM, and hopefully in our CRM back and forth, we're going to learn more areas of WIIFM. And hopefully we might not have to reset customer experiences as needed. We underpromise and over-deliver instead of over-promising and under-delivering. Speaking of CRM, CRM is the philosophy, okay? It is not software. Customer relationship management is a philosophy that software helps us achieve this goal. Software doesn't achieve the goal. But it could be the case that CRM helps with follow-up because some of the follow-up's automated. Some of the problem solving could happen in an automated fashion. That's how another way CRM can help you. There's all kinds of widgets in Salesforce that you can get. Now, the sales manager's role in closing, just like in the overcoming objection techniques, the sales manager is the guide. The sales manager is the helpful problem solver. The sales manager tries to be supportive. They may need to give the salesperson more arsenal or tools to say, okay, I can help you with price here. They can help with creating those win-win solution contracts. They do the positive self-talk with their salespeople. And they also make sure that the sales staff, people, are doing their follow-up. To summarize, in a new school selling environment, if you're being helpful, closing is not a big deal. It should be the natural outcome. It should be like a no-brainer. Like, you were having this problem, you and I went back and forth and discussed a really mutually agreed solution to your problem. The best thing for you is to solve your problem. And I can help you do that. We use verbal and nonverbal signals to figure out when we should close. We avoid some common mistakes. And of course, we're going to do very, very good follow-up. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. I'll see you in a week.